Okay, welcome. Good evening. I will now call the July 21st board meeting of the Lane Community College Board of Education to order in recognition of Governor Kate Brown's Stay Home, Save Lives executive order to combat the spread of COVID-19. This meeting is being held remotely as we transition out of that situation. I'd like to remind board members and staff to keep themselves muted and to use the hand raise feature when you would like to speak. Board members are typically asked to have their video turned on so you're visible to the viewing public. But we do have a board member tonight who will have his video off for the meeting. Donna, can you go ahead and take the roll, please?
Sure. Holly Johnson.
Here.
Angela Van Kraus.
Present.
Mike Eister.
Here.
Austin Folnegi.
Here.
Steve Mattel.
Here.
Rosie Pryor.
Here.
Lisa Fragola.
Present. Great, thank you. So we will start our meeting with an acknowledgement of homeland or land recognition. And tonight, Austin Folnegi, our newly and recently appointed board member, will do that for us.
Thank you. We begin our meeting with the acknowledgement that the land we are on is the traditional homeland of the Kalapuya people. The Kalapuya were stewards of this very land for over 14,000 years before their traditional way of life was forever disturbed and destroyed. We start our meeting with humility and reverence for the original inhabitants of the Kalapuya.
Thank you, Austin. Okay, our first order of business tonight before we move on to our full agenda is to elect a chair and a vice chair. So I will be starting the meeting with that. So we'll start with the electing the chair. Is there a motion for the election of the chair? Holly?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to elect Lisa Fragola as the chair for the Lane Community College Board of Education.
And is there a second?
Second.
Third.
Holly, did you want to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you. So in my short time being on this board, I've seen great leadership qualities in Lisa Fragola. And so that was my immediate decision to elect Lisa. Not only is she patient, efficient, attentive, and a great, effective communicator, but she demonstrates great leadership on this board and a great passion for her work. And so I think her contributions, I think if you could remember one of my first meetings, I said, I love board docs. And I think your contributions in getting board docs set up and the organizational structure for how our meetings are ran is very impressive. You keep our meetings running. Lisa keeps our meetings running smoothly. She keeps us on track and on task. And I, for one, probably would not be here today had it not been for Lisa and her compassion and reaching out and welcoming. And so I'm just happy that we have such a strong leader on our team. The follow-up is awesome. There's never been a dumb question, a wrong question. And when it was followed up, and she's just so thorough in her responses and reflective. If we have a question, she finds out the answer. And I'm sure lots of people wonder how Lisa does it, but she does it somehow with compassion. So I hope that my fellow colleagues and board members will join me as I nominate Lisa Fragola as the chair for our Board of Education. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that, Holly. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the motion? Okay, seeing none, I will I'll call the question or put the question to the board. The motion in front of us is to elect myself, Lisa Fragola, to be the next chair for the LCC Board of Education. Donna, would you call the roll, please?
Holly Johnson,
Yes.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Eister,
Aye.
Austin Fullnagy,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
and Lisa Fragola.
Aye. So we have elected Lisa Fragola as the next chair. Thank you very much. So our next order of business is to elect a vice chair. And do I have a motion from a board member? Austin?
I'd like to nominate Rosie Pryor to the position of vice chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
Sorry, who was that you, Steve?
Mike.
Mike. Okay, great. It was a little faint. I wasn't sure who that was. Okay, so moved by Austin, seconded by Mike. Austin, did you want to speak to that motion?
Yeah, Rosie is very knowledgeable. She has a lot of institutional knowledge she brings to this position, and also in probably one of the big undertakings we have this year, which is recruiting a new president. The chair and the vice chair are going to be a big part of that, and having that institutional knowledge will be really important in recruiting for the next president. So I really respect her, not only her institutional knowledge, but also her family's history with community colleges here in Oregon.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to that motion? Okay, so the question in front of you is, or the motion in front of you is to elect Rosie Pryor as the next vice chair of the LCC Board of Education. Donna, would you please call the roll?
Holly Johnson,
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Eister,
Aye.
Austin Fullnagy,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Thank you, Austin. Aye.
Lisa Fragola.
Aye. So that motion passes. So we've elected Rosie Pryor as the next vice chair of the LCC Board of Education. Great. Thank you, everyone. So moving us on, I'd like to adopt the agenda with flexibility. And if there is no opposition to adopting the agenda with flexibility, then we'll adopt it with unanimous consent. Is there any opposition?
Just a brief clarification or confirmation, rather. The board calendar, this is showing that there's going to be 8 board meetings as opposed to 7 as the traditional board calendar was showing. Is that correct?
So Austin, we're just adopting the whole agenda.
Oh,
with
adopted. Oh, I
flexibility.
apologize. Sorry.
No
We'll get to the
problem.
consent agenda. I'm so
We'll
sorry.
get to the consent agenda. Yeah. So is there any, do you have any opposition to adopting the
Nope.
agenda with flexibility? Okay, great. So so we have adopted the agenda with flexibility. And so we will move on to the president's report, followed by statements from the audience. Dr. Hamilton? You want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Thank you very much. So first of all, welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. Special welcome to our new board members. This is their first official business meeting, and congratulations, Chair Fragola and Vice Chair Rosie Pryor. I want to thank our board members and our staff for all of their work at our July 10th retreat. It was a wonderful retreat, and I'm looking forward to this year. We set our priorities this year, and I gave the board my priorities that I see for this college to work on. Among them is a successful NUQ site visit, our accreditors, a successful launch of our strategic enrollment management plan, fully engaging our community in feedback to complete our FY 22-27 strategic plan, modernization of our IT systems and operations, launching our governance recommendations work plan, delivering a comprehensive access, equity, and diversity plan, restoring year 1 and year 2 of our ending fund balance, developing a comprehensive risk management plan, launching a college-wide professional development program that will include a comprehensive leadership training program, transitioning to a post-COVID teaching and learning environment, and developing comprehensive onboarding for our new president. This should keep us quite busy next year. So kudos to our LCC Torch editor, Chandler Henderson, for being one of 3 men of color interviewed in the Community College Daily. It was a wonderful article. Congratulations to our construction students and their teachers. They were part of an effort to build nearly 24 sheds to help residents affected by the Holiday Farm fire. We passed through phase 1 of our accreditation process successfully, receiving positive feedback from our accreditors on the 6-year report, and the year 7 report has been shared in the Lane Weekly. Our virtual site visit is scheduled October 25th to the 27th, and our focus from this point forward will be preparing everybody for the visit. Special thanks for this team for all their hard work. LCC will be sponsoring the Pride celebration on Saturday, August 14th in Alton Baker Park. Please stop by and say hello. Bond activity is really heating up on campus. Parking lots are being repaired. Our aviation academy got a facelift. We're doing some groundwork for the health professions building, renovations for the advanced technology hub, and some maintenance projects in Florence. So it's quite busy. And as you know, the 2021 session of the legislature concluded, and we were fully funded at $702 million. So many thanks for all of our to all of our legislators for their support. But some special thanks go out to a few folks, especially Representative Marty Wilde. He submitted a $500,000 proposal for Lane to purchase new CTE equipment as one of his 4 ARPA-funded projects, and also Congressman Peter DeFazio, who recently announced that he secured $500,000 for Lane's aviation program as part of the Labor, Health, and Human Services Appropriation Bill. So with so many people to thank for getting us through this pandemic year, it reminds me of a quick story I want to tell you about Charles Plum. And some of you know this story, I'm sure, the United States Navy pilot who flew in Vietnam. So one day, Plum and his wife were sitting in a restaurant, and a man at another table came up and said, "Hey, you're Plum. You flew fighters in Vietnam from the aircraft carrier Kitty Hawk. You were shot down." "How in the world did you know that?" said Plum. "I packed your parachute," the man said. So Plum gasped in surprise and gratitude. And the man pumped his hand and he said, "Well, I guess it worked." So Plum assured him, it sure did work. If your chute hadn't opened, I wouldn't have been here today. So that's how I feel about all of you tonight. I really wouldn't be here without you and with everybody at Lane that works so very hard, including this board. So to all of you who helped pack my parachute this year, I thank you. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. So we'll move on to statements from the audience. And Board Policy BP 320 states that the board will not respond directly to issues raised by the audience, but will refer those issues to the president for appropriate action. However, we do greatly appreciate attendees' participation in tonight's LCC board meeting and the willingness of stakeholders to address the board. To participate in public comment, you can go to the Board of Education website and follow the link to board docs and the sign up link. You can go to the Lane website and click the board meeting feature posted at the bottom of the page. Before each board meeting, you will enter the board meeting as an attendee, but will be moved over to the meeting as a participant when it is your turn to speak. The meeting host will unmute your speaker, and you may also start your video if you choose. Please keep your comments to the 3 minutes allotted to each speaker. And I believe there will also be a timer visible. So tonight, our first person who is speaking is Fiora Starchild Wolf, LCC Enrollment Services employee. Welcome.
Thank you, Lisa. Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. I am Fiora Starchild-Wolf, Enrollment Services Advisor in Building 1 and LCCEF Chair of the Committee on Political Education. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I would like to speak with you about your vote this evening on a vaccine requirement at Lane's campuses. As an EC member on LCCEF, I have been one of the classified representatives, along with Buck Potter, on the group formerly known as the Reopening Advisory Team, since we were formed a little over a year ago in response to COVID. I've listened to weekly discussions, helped set the parameters for safe return, and heard from constituents all over campus throughout this pandemic. Nearly all have been in favor of a vaccine mandate. About a year ago, we were debating whether to require masks on campus or only encourage them. Both the EF and EA unions supported a mandate because we felt that the impact of having all who come to campus be held by the same requirement was not only easier to enforce and build procedures around, but also showed Lane's commitment strongly to the health and safety of our employees and our students. You, our Board of Education, agreed. And shortly after this discussion, Governor Kate Brown issued a statewide mask mandate. Though not everyone liked it, Lane did find that having a mandate works and that it is far easier than encouraging right behavior towards one another. Not leaving it up to personal choice makes everyone safer in a pandemic. Now, a year later, about 6 months into having safe and effective COVID vaccines available, we are again faced with a decision. We want to support in-person classes and student services. We want to be back on our campus together. However, we also need to ensure that as many people as possible are fully vaccinated for the safety of all concerned and for public safety in our community. Both classified and faculty unions have polled our members, students have been polled, administrators have weighed in, all are in favor of a vaccine mandate as a majority. There have been concerns. What if people push back? What if students leave not wanting to have a mandate? With so much ability to have exemptions, why bother, since literally anyone can get an exemption? What about equity for those populations who, for various reasons, feel negatively about being vaccinated? And my favorite, no other community college in Oregon is mandating vaccines. What do we gain by going it alone? My answer to this is this pandemic is not over. The Delta variant is causing surges all over the country right now and is in Lane County. There's a significant chance of it coming to campus. With vaccines mandated, we will know that a majority of us are protected. There are many who will come back to Lane because of knowledge that they have a safe environment to learn in. Employees will also feel more comfortable doing our student-facing jobs and being in offices together. Even with exemptions, a mandate makes it more likely that people will get the vaccine if they didn't plan to otherwise, because of the educational steps or other requirements. And the most important reason for me is data. The college will have data on who is and isn't vaccinated.
You are at time. Would you just go ahead and wrap up with your final sentence?
Sure. Without a mandate, Lane will have no knowledge of where we stand. I'd ask you to take leadership on science and public health. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. So up next, we have Elizabeth Hocking, followed by Donna Jones.
I don't see that Elizabeth Hocking has joined the meeting.
Okay. So then we have, and I'll check back to see at the end. We have Donna Jones, followed by Adrian Mitchell.
It looks like Donna Jones has also not yet joined the meeting.
Okay, so we've got Adrian Mitchell, followed Adrian Mitchell, LCCEA president, followed by Frankie Coconor, LCCEF president.
Good evening, members of the Board of Education. My name is Adrian Mitchell, and I serve as president of LCCEA, representing the 200 full-time and 315 part-time faculty of Lane Community College. I will read the first half of a joint statement from LCCEF and LCCEA, and Frankie Coconor will read the second half. We appreciate President Hamilton's leadership in advocating for a vaccine requirement. We make this joint statement on behalf of classified and faculty employees in solidarity and together express support for the vaccine mandate for students and employees attending LCC activities in person. We believe that a mandate is critical not only for the health and safety of the campus, but also for the community. As a community college with a health clinic, mass vaccination site, and wide-ranging career technical education offerings in health professions, LCC is uniquely positioned to promote public health in Lane County for the common good. As a public institution, we have an essential role and responsibility to do so through our service to the community and educating the future healthcare workers of Lane County, our partnership with Lane County Public Health in providing vaccination clinics, and our role in expanding outreach and vaccine access to BIPOC populations in the college-age student population. While there are broad changes taking place regarding masks and distancing, the CDC guidelines for institutions of higher education provide that masks and distancing are not required for fully vaccinated campuses, but still have guidelines for masks and distancing for campuses that are not considered fully vaccinated, excuse me. So Frankie is going to continue with the second half. Thank you.
Good evening, board members. I'm Frankie Coconor, president of LCCEF, representing the 329 contracted and 158 non-contracted classified jobs at LCC. I will read the second half of the joint LCCEF-LCCEA statement as follows. As you know, both LCCEA and LCCEF surveys of faculty and classified employees indicate strong support for a vaccine mandate. We note also that the reopening advisory team voted unanimously in support of a vaccine mandate, which included management, student, classified, faculty representatives participating in the vote. Because CDC guidelines provide more flexibility for fully vaccinated campuses, requiring vaccines makes good fiscal sense. It will facilitate higher class capacities and more options for on-campus activities for students, as well as more efficient planning and lower resource expenditures. In addition to protecting students and employees on campus, Lane County Public Health has requested LCC require vaccines. Doing so will align LCC with both U of O and Pacific University, which has a location on our campus, and will strengthen our relationship with Lane County Public Health to improve vaccination rates throughout the community. Through partnership and outreach, LCC has the opportunity to reduce barriers to vaccine access at this critical time when variants are increasingly a concern locally and globally. Thank you for your volunteer service on the board and for your consideration of a vaccine mandate to protect the campus and broader community.
Thank you. Up next, we have Jacob Wyatt, LCC Public Safety Employee, and that he will be followed by Kenneth Sherry, LCC IT Employee. Jacob, you want to go? Okay. Welcome. Jacob, you are unmuted, but we can't hear you if you're speaking.
Oh, Jacob did write a comment in the chat that he apologizes. He does not have a mic or a camera.
Okay, so Jacob, maybe you could try. Oh, you don't have either of those things on your computer. All right. Well, I'm not sure what to suggest, but you might try logging in on your phone. And if we see you come back in, we'll queue you up. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for being here with us, Jacob. So that'll take us to Kenneth Sherry, LCC IT Employee, followed by Colin Burick, LCC Specialized Support Services Employee.
Good evening, board. Thank you, Chair Fragola. Welcome, board members, especially new ones, Austin and Steve. I'm Kenneth Sherry, and I work in IT. I'm a programmer analyst, and I primarily support the HR department. And I'm also the Vice President of Labor Relations for the classified employees. I wanted to speak tonight to raise awareness about an existing contract that we have in IT with a vendor called Oculus IT. This vendor does work that our current staff also does. And so this is really an outsourcing of our existing IT tasks in the Banner maintenance. Banner is our enterprise management software that we run payroll through, all of our classes, registration, all this stuff goes through Banner. And we've contracted with this vendor to provide support and services that are currently being done in-house also. So it's been growing on me to shine more and more light on this. And really, I think what kind of triggered me most was realizing that my other colleagues in a similar position as myself are having meetings with people in another country. And as the cliche goes, they're meeting with India, they're meeting with staff in India to work on systems that we have at our, to maintain systems at our college and to grow the Banner systems that we have. And it just hurts me to know that we're spending the money on a vendor, in this case, Oculus IT, and in other cases, the Ellucian contract that you will probably okay tonight. But there also in that contract, there's $90,000 for project management, which is more work that we do at the college. We have staff that does project management work. And so I just want to raise awareness that there's these large vendors, or sometimes the small vendor with Oculus IT, that we are communicating with another country. We're sending our money to a vendor that's outsourcing to another country. We're sending our money to vendors that are sending the money elsewhere. It's not staying local. This is taxpayer money that's funding the college, and people at the college are making decisions to go with vendors that choose to have employment outside of our state or outside of our area or even outside the country. And so I just wanted to raise awareness on this, and I appreciate all the looking into it that you all can do. And if you have any more questions, please feel free to contact me, Sherry K at lanecc.edu. I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kenny. Up next, we have Colin Burick. Colin, I see that you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Hello? You want to go ahead and try unmuting? Randy, can you unmute Colin?
No, I cannot. He has to do that.
Okay. There we go. All right, let's try it one more time, and if we're not successful, we'll move on. So I'm going to ask you to unmute. You want to go ahead and try unmuting Colin, and we'll see if it works this time. Okay, so I encourage anyone who hasn't been able to participate this evening because of technological difficulties to send your comments to the board. We definitely do appreciate them. I'm wondering if we have Elizabeth Hocking or Donna Jones, if they have joined the meeting.
No, it looks like neither of them have joined.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. So that does bring us to the end of people who have signed up to give public comment. Sorry about the technological challenges, but please do send your comments to us if you were not able to give public input tonight. I am going to move us on to the consent agenda. Are there any items in the consent agenda that board members would like to pull?
Before so the board calendar, I just wanted to confirm that these are the dates that would allow for 8 board meetings.
So Austin, we're going to go ahead and pull it. And then we'll come back to it. So is there any other items that someone would like to pull from the consent agenda? Angela?
Thank you. I'd like to pull item J, the Elysian contract, please.
Okay, thank you. So far we've pulled A. Oops, sorry. No, so far we've pulled E, the FY22 board calendar, and item J, the Elysian contract. Is there anything else somebody would like to pull? Angela, is there something else?
Must be an old hand.
Okay, thank you. All right, so if there's nothing else that we want to pull, do I have a motion to pass the rest of the consent agenda?
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Okay, so I have a motion by Mike Eister, seconded by Rosie Pryor to move approval of the consent agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, Donna, could you call the roll, please?
Okay. Holly Johnson,
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Eister,
Aye.
Austin Fullnagy,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Lisa Fragola.
Aye. So we have approved the other items in the consent agenda. I'm going to move item E and item J to the beginning of the action items. And we'll start with the FY22 board calendar. Okay, Austin, did you want to speak to that?
Yes, thank you. So essentially with this calendar, so the original calendar essentially had 7 meetings over the course of the school year, which we brought up as a concern in our board retreat. There's a possibility of having 9, and this one would allow for 8, excluding essentially a December meeting that's within the fiscal year. But the following years, we would be getting approximately 9 board meetings within the school year by continuing this, starting this on the next year and continuing this schedule forward. Is that correct?
Yes, I think I can speak to that. So at the board retreat, we did discuss reversing the order in which we have our work sessions and our board meetings during a month, to having the board meetings the first week and work sessions the third week. In the investigation and kind of looking at how that would roll out, there was some recognition of things that had been planned for the fall that were going to make that challenging. And so the calendar that you see in front of you is an implementation of the request that was made at the retreat by board members. The intent is to fully move forward to making that change, but we will start that process at the beginning of 2022. That gives us time to make the transition this coming fall. And so you're correct. We would have, previously it was 7 meetings that were accessible to all stakeholder groups, and we'll go to 8. And then the following year it would be 9. Is there any other, Angela?
Thank you. I actually noticed that we have locations on some of these meetings. Does that mean that we're actually gonna go on site to locations?
You were going on tour, yes.
How about that?
Wow.
So it is important to note that our September work session will be in Florence, and it is a board tradition to have our September meeting at the Florence campus. And so we will want to make sure we give ourselves a little travel time for that. We have other satellite campuses that we will also be heading to throughout the fall. Any other comments or questions about this item? Steve?
Thank you for doing this. And just a very brief clarification. I heard you say that this allows us to make an additional 1 or 2 board meetings accessible to all staff members. And just technically speaking, all the board meetings are always accessible to all staff members. This makes them accessible during their contracted period of time, that 10-month contract.
Correct. And it also makes it more accessible to students. So thank you for that clarification. So if there are no other comments or questions, I would need a motion to approve this calendar. Do I have a motion?
I move approval of item E in the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, moved by Mike, seconded by Rosie. Mike, did you want to speak to that?
I don't think I need to say any more.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, the motion we have in front of us is to approve the fiscal year 22 board calendar. And so Donna, could you please call the roll?
Hey, Holly Johnson,
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Eister,
Aye.
Austin Fullnagy,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Lisa Fragola.
Aye. So we've approved the calendar. Make sure you get that in your phone or wherever you keep your dates handy. So the next item we are going to discuss is the Lucian contract. Angela, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, thank you. I was actually curious about some of the line items of expense. So there's the project management, of course, which Kenny mentioned. LCC, of course, has project management staff. There are also a few line items of analytics, and I think that there's some sort of burgeoning analytical capability, business intelligence, that sort of thing. And so I'm just wondering if we can have maybe a little bit of an understanding, maybe an explanation of why these services need to be provided by this vendor and sort of can't be managed in-house.
If I may, I'd like to respond.
Yes, go ahead, Richard.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon. The project for Lucian is an alignment project. Let's give an overview. This was not done quietly. It was done very actively with every division represented in a spring meeting with our Lucian counterparts from every division: IT, student affairs, academic affairs, the whole list. We looked at the complete holistic use of Banner, our ERP, and what we had not activated and what we were as far as unable to activate, which cost us money with third-party vendors so they can help us with it. The two areas of choice which you've asked about, Trustee Van Kraus, the analytics. I brought analytics when I came to the college almost a year ago, and we've got a first version for the board analytics up and available. The analytics that we're looking at here on the expense account are with Tableau, the same tool we use today, however, are enhanced, used directly from the data lake inside of the ERP Banner. They will have time to train additional personnel besides myself. We will have people there who will get the data warehouse and data lake training, people who will get the analytics building training, people who we need data governance training significantly here at the campus, but it will include all the divisions within the work. So it's not just an IT group that's getting trained, it's all of the users who are heavy hitters, power users in Banner, so they can understand the rules and regulations of data storage. The second part that you've asked about, Trustee Van Kraus, is the project management. Yes, we do have project management here with limited capabilities. They are expended to the max right now with the addition of 2 other projects that are third-party vendors with EAB and Target X you may have heard about. We do not have the capacity to manage the entire project, which we will need their help. It is over 2 years. The other part of the outcomes of this, of us aligning Banner to where it is better utilized, we will open up areas that we're not able to use now. HR will receive faculty load and compensation, helping us schedule our classes and courses with the appropriate loads under contract. We will receive the ability to do advanced analytics, which are refreshed instead of nightly by the hour, which will undoubtedly help when we're on enrollment cycles. We will increase the workflow of our existing personnel. So there will not be less work, there will be more work. And we will begin to retire third-party vendors that we have had to rely on in the past. As we finish the upgrades, then those contracts that expire will not be renewed. I can provide a list, but we're working on that right now because there are additional softwares that we will be retiring because they will then be duplicated. This is a concentrated effort. This was a collaborative and agreed upon effort. Every item of work here was discussed with the owners and the power users as what would be necessary for them to get full utilization from our ERP. This contract has been reviewed 3 times. We have edited it down to the narrowest possibility of expense so we don't underspend or overspend. If there are other questions I can answer for you, I'd be happy to do so.
I see that Austin has his hand raised.
Excellent. Thank you, Chairman. So do we do a market feasibility? I call them market feasibility reports, but essentially they're a comparison between if we did in-house versus contracting out. You mentioned certain areas where we're at capacity with workload in certain areas, but do we do comparables when analyzing these type of contracts?
We look at comparables as far as what it would cost for us to home host versus a contract host and subscription service. It depends on which area we're looking at. I can tell you with this, we do not have the capacity to address all of these because we don't have the engineering technical ability. We have to rely on the vendor who built the machine to train our folks on how to use it better. That's why I don't have another resource to go to except for the Ellucian company because it is their product. With maintenance, certain maintenance and patching and so forth, we pay third-party vendors, to my recollection, less than half of a salary of an engineer currently, and we plan to retire that. So I hope I'm answering your question. There are other feasibility studies I'm sure we could have if we were in an attempt to change our ERP, but we're not looking at that. We're looking at become more effective and efficient with the ERP we have.
Understood. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments, discussion? Angela?
I cannot hear.
She hasn't said anything yet.
Sorry,
Oh.
sorry. Thank you. I appreciate the explanation. It's clear that this has undergone a lot of review and collaboration. I move approval of the Ellucian contract.
Second.
So that is approval moved by Angela, seconded by Rosie. Angela, did you want to speak to your motion?
I think Richard spoke to it quite eloquently. Thank you.
Thank you. So any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion to approve the Ellucian contract. Donna, can you call the roll, please?
Holly Johnson.
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus.
Aye.
Mike Eister.
Aye.
Austin Fullnagy,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Lisa Fragola.
Aye. That motion carries. We've approved that contract. I am going to move us on to our action items. We will be starting with the action item fully vaccinated campus. I did want to, before I turn it over to Dr. Hamilton for a presentation, I did want to remind the board that we have a pending motion. At our previous board meeting, a motion was postponed by Angela. And so we do have a pending motion, and after the presentation, we will take up that pending motion. Dr. Hamilton?
Thank you, Chair Fragola. So the board's received a very extensive background to explain what the recommendation actually means tonight. In summary, the CDC gave us really two definitions that we could use for a campus in higher education. We could either be a fully vaccinated campus or a non-fully or a mixed campus. And once you're fully vaccinated, then you verify that all of your employees and your students have been vaccinated against the COVID-19, except for those who may be exempt due to medical or some other reason. So we've done extensive research on this. We have had surveys, we have had discussions, town halls, we have consulted with every possible external partner we could. So therefore, college administration tonight feels very confident to bring forward a recommendation to our board to become a fully vaccinated campus. Our primary goal here is to create a campus environment where both our students and our employees feel safe enough to come back to school and come back to work. We have heard a clear and a consistent message from our employee groups that they really will feel safer coming back to campus if we require the vaccinations. We've heard a very clear, loud message from our students that they want to come back to campus, and they would prefer to be on a campus where they could feel as safe as possible and interact with their peers and their teachers. So tonight, we are recommending that LCC become a COVID-19 fully vaccinated campus with allowing medical and non-medical exemptions effective fall 2021, and that the college begin communicating this plan immediately to all of our students and employees. And now I'll take questions.
Okay, are there any questions for Dr. Hamilton? Angela, followed by Mike.
Thank you. When this was brought up in our last meeting, I felt like I really just didn't have enough context. I didn't have enough information. I didn't have a feel for how the community was really leaning, or if it was past leaning, if it was very strong sentiment. And so I just wanted to say, a big thank you for all of the work, the research, and the really thorough documentation that you sent to us that's in this board packet. I felt like it really answered all of my questions, and I'm comfortable moving forward. And I appreciate all of the effort that went into giving us that information and making sure that we're moving in the right direction.
Mike, followed by Austin.
Yes, I was one of the board members who also had reticence at the last meeting. I wanted to say that I'm fully prepared to vote in favor of the motion now, and I don't know if I'm not sure if we make a motion to take it off the table, or if we just if you could give us an idea of what the parliamentary procedure is on it, Lisa.
Yes, it's a pending motion, and so there does not need to be another motion made. It is pending, and it wasn't given an explicit time in the meeting and is not a special order. It's a general order. So I put it in at the appropriate time in the agenda. So we have a current motion made by Matt Keating, seconded by Rosie Pryor. And I can read it to you. It is in the minutes.
I'm prepared to.
Okay. All right. Great.
I don't want to push it though. If other people have questions, I can wait until I make the suggestion that we take action.
Okay, so I see Austin has his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the previous board for their thoughtful conversation around this issue. And I actually came a long ways on this issue. I was actually against a vaccine mandate, and thankfully, but I've had an opportunity to listen to staff, especially classified staff who've been working throughout the pandemic on campus. And I really am grateful for them sharing their experiences with me. And that really moved me on this issue, as well as the fact that we can be able to have information, which is really helpful, especially as we go into this year with the Delta variant and so forth. We'll be able to know what percentage of our staff and students are vaccinated, which allows us to make decisions on a dynamic level of, do we need, how much separation do we need between staff and students, and so on and so forth. So this is, I think, really important, and I'm voting in favor of this. So I just want to really, really thank the thoughtful conversations made by staff, administration of this board, and I look forward to voting to approve this.
Rosie, followed by Steve.
Thank you. Some decisions that a public policy board makes really should and would benefit from a unanimous vote by the policy board. This is one of those times, in my humble estimation. I would like to sincerely encourage all of my colleagues to support a mandate for all of the reasons that have already been spoken, not the least of which is the extensive research and support that's been manifested by students and employees at the college. So I just would like to encourage a unanimous vote.
Steve?
Well, thanks. This was actually a pretty straightforward decision for me. I'll be voting in support of the measure. I just wanted to get clarification, though. You started to summarize the pending motion. I did not read it in the minutes, and I did not attend the last meeting. So if you just let me know what that is, that would be helpful.
Yes, and you can also find it in section 9 of the approval of June 16th, 2021 minutes and the consent agenda, but I will read it. It is.
You don't need to read it. Just if you just summarize the gist of it's probably plenty.
That we will require all students and employees to be fully vaccinated for the COVID-19 virus for on-campus activity instruction, and will allow for both medical and non-medical exceptions consistent with Oregon law.
So it's just simply the measure that otherwise probably would have been forwarded tonight.
Yes, and we also direct the president to implement this in accordance with.
Okay, so it's the motion I would otherwise have expected to come tonight, but it came at the last meeting. Got it. Thank you.
Yes, you are welcome. Thank you for asking.
Well, I'd like to suggest that we go forward with the vote, Lisa.
Okay, so we do have a pending motion, and I don't see any other hands, so I am going to go ahead and move forward with it. So we have a motion that was postponed, and is there anybody, I basically nearly read all of it. Is there anybody else who would like for me to read it in its entirety? It is in your minutes. Okay, so then I am going to ask Donna to call the roll. The motion in front of us is to require all students, employees to be fully vaccinated.
Okay, Holly Johnson.
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus.
Aye.
Mike Eister.
Aye.
Austin Fullnagy.
Aye.
Steve Mattel.
Aye.
Rosie Pryor.
Aye.
Lisa Fragola.
Aye. So that motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Dr. Hamilton, for all of your work on this recommendation. So that takes us to action item B, sunset of the reopening safely plan. Dr. Hamilton?
Thank you, Chair Fragola, and absolutely thank you to all of this board for making a very courageous, brave, and absolutely on point decision and being the first of the community colleges. So I couldn't be more proud tonight as a nurse and as a president. So thank you. So in order to take care of business, we are also looking at sunsetting what we were calling the reopening safely plan because we are opening. So what we would like to do is have you sunset that particular plan and then charge me and the college to put together a COVID-19 safety plan where we will look at functioning as a campus under these conditions of being a vaccinated campus. So questions?
Rosie?
I don't have a question. I was going to move to start discussion that the board sunset the existing reopening safely plan and charge the president with creation of a general COVID-19 safety plan.
Second.
Second.
Okay, great. Moved by Rosie and seconded by Austin and also Mike. So are there questions? Rosie, did you want to speak to your motion? Okay, so questions or discussion? And Angela.
Thank you. In the last paragraph of the background, there's a reference to an infectious disease policy advisory group to review ongoing information on infectious diseases such as COVID-19. And so I just want to sort of ask a little bit more about this. Obviously, it's going to be, the reopening advisory team is going to be transitioned to this group, so it hasn't been created yet. So you can't tell me, what is it doing because it hasn't started yet. But I'm curious when I see such as COVID-19, I think, novel new diseases. However, as we all know, there are a number of diseases in existence that are quite deadly and are not new, but we don't require vaccinations for folks to come on our campus. And so I'm wondering if that's going to be part of the review process that this group will undertake.
So I think not initially, but I think eventually we really have to, right now, our immediate need is to make sure the campus has all the protocols in place for the fall. But we have chatted about then what, and many of us have lived through these types of infectious diseases on other campuses or other places of employment. It can be deadly. So we need to first get our arms around the policies and the procedures we have. We dealt with water and air. I mean, you heard a lot from me this week about getting our HVAC systems up to much better condition. So I think this group is going to look at that, because actually with most of these contagious diseases, you are looking at the same thing. You're looking at the quality of the water, the air, and the surfaces. So not today, but yes, I think that I would like them to expand and move ahead to look at a more broad category of infectious diseases.
Angela, do you have follow-up, or did that answer your question?
I think that my question is more about, are we going to be looking at vaccination requirements for non-novel diseases, less about how our infrastructure supports sort of cleanliness. So
I think yes. I think yes. I think in time we will. Yes, to tell you the truth, because the state as a whole is chatting more about this. The 17 community colleges, we're all discussing it. So I think you'll be hearing more discussion about this later on.
Thank you. I'm interested in hearing what research and recommendations this group will provide. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments, discussion? I do have myself in the queue. So Marge, I wanted clarification, like when we're talking about kind of institutionalizing the I just keep thinking of it as the RAT, which is I don't know if that's an unfortunate or a good acronym. It's definitely memorable, the Reopening Action Team. I just feel like there's so much experience on that team. And so I just wanted to clarify that when we're talking about this group, that we are going to be able to continue to utilize the expertise that's been developed.
So yes, but like any committee, these folks have worked, this group has worked harder than I've ever seen, because they literally never got a break. They have been for almost 18 months meeting weekly. If one of them wanted a break for a bit, they might want to come off. If somebody new wanted to come on with different expertise. So I think like every committee on campus, we've got the core, but people can now come on and off. They work so well together and they've learned so much. So we don't want to lose the integrity of that group.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I think there's a lot that they have learned that the college will benefit from. So any other comments or questions? I'm not seeing any. So the question in front of us is a motion to sunset the Reopening Safely plan. Donna, can you call the roll, please?
Holly Johnson,
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Eister,
Aye.
Austin Folneggy,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Lisa Fragola.
Aye. So that motion carries. Our next action item is the presidential search. So Dr. Hamilton has announced her retirement, and so we are beginning to think about the recruitment and selection of a new president. And just as a quick review, at our retreat, we did discuss having staff. Well, actually, the previous board meeting, I recommended to the board that we ask staff to begin collecting submissions from search firms. And at the retreat, we discussed that the preferred option was for the staff to review them and to present some recommendations. And we have that work in our board packet. And Deborah Butler is going to go ahead and talk with us about that. Deborah?
Thank you. So you'll see on page 3 of the materials provided to you, there's a chart, pages 3 and 4. These are the sort of a summary of the top 3 scoring firms from the proposals that were received. All of the proposals are also included in their entirety in the packet so that you could review them completely. And so the categories here, there's just some notes about each of the categories that were the board criteria that we provided to the search consultants. There was actually not a very large span of scores between these firms in the end. So we received 7 proposals. We had solicited or contacted 8 firms. We received 7 proposals by the deadline, and they were all very close in score. In fact, the third one here, so these are in order from top scoring on the left. So ACCT was top scoring, Gold Hill Associates second, and Polygroup was third. But I should say that Polygroup actually, in terms of score, tied with RH Perry, another firm. And I've included Polygroup here because they have far more community college search experience. But the score was the same between Polygroup and RH Perry. And so I'm glad to answer any questions about the information provided here. I'm confident that I would be glad to recommend any of these firms, but in my mind and in scoring, ACCT did edge out the rest by a small margin.
Okay, are there any questions for Deborah? Austin?
Yeah, Gold Hills. So they are a minority-owned business, according to the report. Thank
Mhm.
you.
Yes.
Steve?
Could you summarize any recent interactions, let's say going back the last 3 years, where we have used either or any of these three firms? Either, I know we used one of them for to hire Marge, but what other senior execs have we used or have been brought to campus with either of these three?
Sure. Yeah. So in the time that I've been with the college, which has been a little over 6 years, we've used only Gold Hill Associates in executive searches. And that's just sort of the way that it's worked out. So they were our search consultant in the last presidential search. And they were also a consultant on our search for our provost, Paul Jarrell, and also for our previous vice president, Marty Hannafin. And so we have interacted with them with multiple different consultants from their firm. And we certainly haven't had any kind of a negative experience, but just looking from the scoring of all of the groups, ACT was just slightly higher than they scored.
Just a quick follow-up. Do we use search firms for recruiting of our, when we recruit for VP of Finance Administration?
We didn't this time around. And some of that was a cost saving, some of it was a timing, and some of it was really wanting to try out some of the equity and inclusion sort of improvements that we were envisioning. And so we had an opportunity to try those out and to kind of run the search internally and really check at every opportunity with our search committee. We have used search firms, specialized search firms before in other searches, non-executive searches. So I can think of KLCC, I know, because radio is sort of a specific field. We have used an external firm for a public safety search once in the past too, because that was a sort of a specialized area, specialized recruitment area. But otherwise, we have not used a firm for every executive search.
Thanks, Deborah.
Sure.
Oh, I have myself in the queue, and then Austin will be next. So I think we all know how much I appreciate Dr. Hamilton, and Gold Hill did successfully recruit Dr. Hamilton. But I will also say that I'm looking for a search firm that I believe can really recruit and support a diverse pool of candidates. So there's more than just getting the information out to being able to do that. There are the connections, the relationships, and part of that is conversations that happen that encourage a diverse pool of candidates to want to move to the Pacific Northwest. I basically have had the opportunity to have some conversations that lead me to think that ACCT would be the search firm that could do that. And you know, we have had some luck with Gold Hill, but I would have to say we also haven't seen that diverse of a pool when we have worked with that organization. So ACCT, I think, has incredible reach throughout the country into regions that are going to have more diverse potential applicants. And I think that they have the greatest understanding of community colleges, as well as the ability to understand how to work with a board. So I am leaning towards ACCT. And Deborah, I did just want to check about non-bias training for the board. And my understanding is that all three of these would be able to provide that to us.
Yeah, so all three of them, actually all of the firms that responded either were able to perform the training or would work with someone to provide the training or partner with the college to provide the training. Most of the descriptions of what that training would look like were pretty vague. And so once the board selects a consultant, we can contact the consultant and kind of get a little bit more detail about what might be available. If we would like to have more than what's available from the consultant in terms of anti-bias training and orientation. But we could certainly look at contracting with another consultant just for that portion. So there might be somebody even local, or we could look nationally to see if there's someone who could provide just that orientation. That probably wouldn't be a significant cost.
Okay, Rosie?
Thought Austin was ahead of me in the queue.
He put his hand down, and also you haven't had a chance to speak to this yet, so that would put him following you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm prepared to make a motion. I move that the board select ACCT as I don't have the motion right in front of me, to select a search consultant, ACCT, for a presidential search and recruitment process. I also move that the board appoint Deborah Butler to liaise with the board on this process.
I
Okay,
second that as well.
Okay, so we will start with the first motion, which is to select ACCT as the search firm for the process to recruit and select a president. That was moved by Rosie and seconded by Mike. Rosie, did you want to speak to that motion?
Actually, I am convinced that any one of the three of these search firms would do an exceptional job for Lane. My personal experiences with Gold Hill during our last search, you should be aware that Marge's primary competition for the position was an African-American individual from California who ultimately withdrew. So I think there should be no anxiety about any of the three of these firms being able to help us identify and recruit from a diverse pool of candidates. I do think that's a huge priority. But given the homework and the time that Deborah and Shane Turner and Greg Evans have put into this review and rating process on behalf of the board, I'm prepared to support their recommendation that it be ACCT that we select.
Thank you. Mike, did you want to?
I took my hand down.
Okay. Austin, was there something? Okay. So we have a motion to approve the recommendation from staff to select ACCT as the search firm. Is there any other discussion? Angela?
Thank you. Deborah, I think you mentioned that you felt that ACCT edged out the other competitors. I was wondering, was that a bit of a consensus conclusion from the group, from you and Shane and Greg?
Yeah, it was. So Shane and I were the only two scorers on this, but we were in agreement that ACCT came out on the top. Yes.
Super, thank you.
And I don't want to speak for Shane, so he's here if he has anything that he'd like to add that would be helpful.
Shane?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree that the scoring fleshed out that ACCT was the top choice for both of us. Echoing the other comments, I think any of the three could be successful in it. I just felt like ACCT had the edge in this case.
Okay. Any other conversation, discussion? All right, seeing none, we have a motion for ACCT as the search firm, and Donna, I'm gonna have you call the roll.
Okay, Holly Johnson.
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus.
Aye.
Mike Eister.
Aye.
Austin Folnegi.
Aye.
Steve Mattel.
Aye.
Rosie Pryor.
Aye.
Lisa Fragola.
Aye, so that motion carries. So we do have a second motion to appoint Deborah Butler as the liaison to the board for this process. And Rosie, did you want to speak to that motion?
This is a really important and key role for someone Deborah will wind up with a lot of the responsibility for the logistics and the foundational support and interaction with our recruitment firm. I have the utmost faith in Deborah. Trust her instincts, absolutely. So I recommend her.
Angela?
Thank you. I agree with all of the sentiments that Rosie just expressed. Deborah, do you want to be the liaison?
Yeah, that's very kind of you to ask it. Yes, I would be glad. I would be glad to. I mean, I understand this is an important search. I'm so sorry to see Marge retiring, honestly, but I think this is an exciting time for the college, and I'm fully invested. So yes, I would be glad to act in that role.
Good question.
So any other discussion? All right, seeing none, we have a motion to approve Deborah Butler as the liaison for the recruitment and selection of the president. Donna, can you call the roll, please?
Holly Johnson,
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Eister,
Aye.
Austin Fullnagy,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Lisa Fragola.
Aye, that motion carries. Thank you very much. And Deborah, thank you for all of your hard work so far on this. So even though we're just starting out, I think we have a good start.
Thank
All right.
you.
Yes. So our next action item is the emergency procurement to remediate airflow related to COVID-19. And so it looks like I see Zach Evans' name here, but I saw Jennifer Hayward just unmuted. So who's up to bat first?
Thank you, Chair. I will start. So
okay, great.
We provided detailed background regarding this issue on board docs, as also attached a detailed memo regarding Oregon Procurement Code. So tonight, the college is seeking board approval for an emergency procurement for HVAC services related to the COVID-19 pandemic. The funding source for this, we were able to leverage the Higher Education Emergency Relief Funds, also known as HERF, through the American Rescue Plan Act to obtain third-party verification that the college is providing good air quality for all students, employees, and visitors to campus. And as you had mentioned, Jennifer Hayward, Director of Facilities, has joined me tonight, and we are available for questions.
Okay, questions by the board. Austin.
Actually, I'd just like to make a motion that the board approve an emergency procurement for HVAC services related to COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so moved by Austin, seconded by Mike. Austin, would you like to speak to your motion?
It's a good idea and we should vote yes.
Any other questions or discussions? Steve?
Excuse me, I forgot to unmute. I sent an email late this afternoon. I understand. I apologize for that. I only saw the, the need for this late this afternoon after I was finishing up some work. So I apologize for putting staff a little bit on short notice. But nonetheless, I sent a question, Jennifer. I'm assuming you have received it. Would you mind, you're reading it so everybody knows what it is and just giving the response?
Oh, gosh. I
can summarize it.
Okay, please.
Well,
I am prepared to respond.
That's fine. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you doubly on the spot. The question was just roughly that at the time I was assuming we might pass the resolution to make Lane Community College a vaccinated campus. We have since done that. So now that we are moving forward with being a vaccinated campus this fall, we can assume or presume that significantly high percentage of faculty, staff, students, and perhaps visitors, actually, I don't know about that particular, will be vaccinated. So the value of increasing our air change rates would go down at least somewhat right there. It's for to make the air safer for a condition where you expect a high degree of COVID in the air. But given that we have so much we'll have largely be vaccinated, we don't anticipate that. So the value of this goes down now that we've just passed the other motion. What is the remaining value, and how might we sort of counterbalance that against what we would have to anticipate would be increasing energy bills? Right. I mean, and that would be borne by the institution, not by third parties that are intervening and helping out on this particular thing. But I would assume the energy costs are ours to pay, and there's some additional emissions.
Yeah, thanks, Steve, for repeating that for the board. So I have a couple of reasons why I'd like to propose that we move forward with this. One is that our number one priority will be prioritizing areas that have historically had employees reporting poor ventilation. So we'll have the company go in there first and adjust and make sure that we're providing at least ventilation per design, because some of these are old 20 to 50-year-old areas, and they're inevitably going to find problems, and they will fix them. And I think that this is, even though we will have a fully vaccinated campus, this is going to be really important for employee confidence, I think. And I've talked to several other people, and they have the same idea. We have a lot of employee areas that are cube farms, basically, so big rooms with cubicles, and employees who work in those areas especially are worried, even though everybody is presumably vaccinated in that area. And then the second reason is because we're going to be prioritizing older buildings, like I talked about, the 20 to 50-year-old buildings that haven't had major service in all of those years. So they will, like I said, inevitably find problems, and we will be fixing those. So, I mean, some of this project is just making sure we're back to code and back to design.
Do you have any, thanks for the answer. Do you have any estimate on what the added energy cost will be on an annual basis once you complete the tune-ups?
That's an interesting question. Our energy costs were so low last year because nobody was on campus, and I mean, it'll be interesting to know what enrollment will be this year, and whether we'll have fewer people here just because people are used to being online and like it. So, I mean, it may be a net zero change. I don't expect it to be huge because of an increase in ventilation. If anything, it'll be a small increase because we're correcting problems.
Yeah, just as one comparison, I work at the University of Oregon.
Steve, so we tend not to do a lot of back and forth conversation. I'm going to go to Rosie, and then I can come back to you for a second round. Does that
Fair
work?
enough. Yep. Fair
Okay,
enough.
Rosie.
Thank you. I think it's important for all of the board, and especially our newer board members, to know that I view this as a bad news, good news situation. The bad news is we've experienced a pandemic. The good news is we've been awarded funds we can actually use to go back and correct problems that are a function of aging and poorly cared for through no fault of administration and through the fault of a lack of resources. The entire time I've been on the board, we have budgeted a bare minimum annual facility investment. And so this is a golden opportunity, as Jennifer has pointed out, to go back and fix situations that have caused problems for employees in terms of air quality and environment to work in, for students and the like. So that's why I see this as the bad news, good news situation. I don't think, Steve, that the cost of anything over time goes down. By the same token, it feels like, to use your words, if we tune up systems we have in place and they work more efficiently, surely we will help control or constrain the rising costs that we pay on an annual basis. It's like when you ask the public sector, when are my taxes going to go down? They're not. Your taxes are never going to go down, but we can do everything under the sun to try to reduce the rate at which they go up. And so that's how I view this investment.
Okay, is there any other conversation or discussion? And Steve, I see your hand, so go ahead.
Well, just going to follow up. I work at the University of Oregon and went through a similar exercise at the beginning of the pandemic, and basically decided to open up all the HVAC units that were operable in that kind of way for 100% air exchanges, so the maximum amount that the systems could tolerate. And done for obvious reasons, and it does have a significant impact on the energy bills. You can just imagine on a cold day in December, January, February, right, when you're just venting as much conditioned warm air as you possibly can and bringing in a lot of cold air that you then have to recondition. That's what you're doing day in and day out, and then vice versa in the summer. And I'm not saying I'm going to vote against this. I'm just cautioning us to think through the issue, because the situation that the University of Oregon is now in and LCC would be in if we move forward with this is how and when do you turn down that higher volume of air change. People get accustomed to it. They think it's great. It's way beyond what is necessary for health and safety. But convincing taking it away feels difficult, and politically it is. So that's just stuff that needs to be considered. I'm not saying that I'm against this. It's just making sure that we're thinking through the issues.
Jennifer?
And yes, Steve, I appreciate those comments and hearing about the experience at U of O. And our plan is to optimize sensibly, if that makes sense.
Okay. Well, I trust you, Jennifer. I'm supporting it.
Okay, any other discussion or questions? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion to approve this emergency procurement recommendation made by Austin. And so I'm going to have Donna go ahead and call the roll.
Holly Johnson,
Yes.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Eister,
Aye.
Austin Fullnagy,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Lisa Fragola.
Aye, so that motion carries. That concludes our the action items of our agenda. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our discussion items. We have a presentation on pathways to opportunities that is being made by Rosa Lopez. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Am I going to be able to share my screen? Yes. Okay, great. So my name is Rosa Lopez. I'm the Career Pathways Faculty Coordinator, and I'm happy to be with you here today. I work on the development of short-term career technical certificates that are stackable and part of larger CTE programs. I'm the lead for PassLane, which is a program that onboards high-risk, high barrier and low-skilled adults into those programs. And most importantly, I'm also the lead for the Pathways to Opportunity, which is what I'm here to discuss today. So, give me a moment. Right, so quickly, in a very short period of time, I'm going to attempt to tell you about Pathways to Opportunity and the Community College Consortia. I'm going to give you some local and statewide data on students in poverty, including our campus data on students in poverty. And I probably won't have time for that third bullet, but we'll see. So Pathways to Opportunity is a statewide initiative that is focused on looking at those high barrier populations and finding ways that we can impact policy and collaborate with local agencies and also statewide agencies and federal agencies in an effort to support students more holistically. We believe that education, of course, is the main vehicle to move people out of poverty and into economic mobility. But in reality, education is not accessible and far too expensive for many populations, a lot of times due to policy that prevents populations from accessing education to begin with. The Pathways to Opportunity Community Consortia includes all 17 community colleges, but it also includes national policy organizations that have been consulting with us. We are a state lead for this, and other states have actually been learning from our state in Oregon. And so other states are beginning to replicate what we've been doing these past 4 years. But we also have partners like DHS, our workforce, our Oregon Employment Department, and we also have small and local non-government organizations that we work with. And so we keep growing our partnership, and we meet quarterly in a community of practice. Again, to look at policy, practice, and instructional design in terms of how we can support students that have these high barriers. Here are some of the organizations that we work with, certainly not all by any means. I will just draw your attention to the Hope Center, which is, the Hope Center was established by Dr. Sarah Goldbrick-Rabb out of Temple University in Pennsylvania. And she's really a leading researcher on poverty and students throughout the country, and has done research in most of the states and extensively in Oregon and Washington, 25 other states, in terms of poverty rates among students at universities and community colleges. And it's worth noting that we were actually just admitted as a capacity building cohort, their inaugural capacity building cohort. And we were awarded a $16,000 scholarship in order to be part of that. So we don't actually have to pay any money to be a part of it. So we're pretty excited about that as well. And so we can tell you more about that next year. But this next year we'll be working on surveys and data and really look at poverty and how we can create an ecosystem of support for our students here at LCC. So looking at some of the data that the Hope Center has done over the years, you can see that community colleges in general face a much higher level of poverty than universities, although universities have a very high level of poverty now as well. So we look at 42 to 56% food insecurity nationwide in community colleges, 46 to 60% housing insecurity, and 12 to 18% homelessness. Oregon community colleges are no different. We fall right in line with the national data. In 2019, we did 14 of the 17 community colleges did this survey, and we came up with these measures. So slightly higher homelessness rate among our students, which is not really a surprise, I think, for most of us, but mostly we're just aligned right on par with the rest of the country. LCC was actually not one of those 14 colleges. However, we did do a survey in 2020, right after the pandemic, which then showed higher rates of food insecurity and housing insecurity. So we actually demonstrated a 63% of any basic needs insecurity among our student population in spring of 2020, 47% food insecurity, 39% housing insecurity, and 14% homelessness among our LCC students. So this 63%, this is really our student population. This is really who we are serving. And in fact, there's a much larger population of people in the community who we could be serving, who have these barriers or have these basic needs or even higher. So when we look at policy and practices, if we keep this in mind in terms of a lens, this is who we really are. This is our population, and it's important to understand that. So it used to be 20, 30 years ago that financial aid was the tool of equity that gave everyone access to education, but that is really not the case anymore. So in public two-year students, 71% still had unmet need when it came to tuition fees, room and board, books and supplies, transportation, and other. So 71% of our students, financial aid doesn't, if they even have access to financial aid for that matter, doesn't cut it. So it is important to think about what ends up happening. It's our students in high poverty that if they can access education, they end up looking at taking out excessive loans. It is not our wealthier students that take out loans, it's our high poverty populations that take out excessive loans just to live off of. And so we have these populations of students. Think about the number of students who get free and reduced lunch in high school. They come to college, well, we don't have free and reduced lunch. So they go hungry or they take out excessive loans. So we have, so we believe in PTO that education is supposed to help you get out of poverty, not drive you deeper into poverty. So we work with students to try to figure out how to avoid loans altogether through programs like STEP and some of the other things that we do locally. So one of the ways that we're going to be able to support students is by looking beyond just financial aid, is to look at all these other resources in the community, national resources, federal resources, state resources, and local resources to really help students. So how do we get this information? How do we get these resources to students? And also, how do we help community members who are already taking advantage of these systems gain access to education? And one of the things that is clear is that in many cases, there's actually policy that prevents students from accessing these resources. So that's where we need to come into play and say, how can we impact the policy that's preventing? And I'll give you an example that we're really proud of in Oregon. SNAP benefits it has a certain criteria. You have to meet a certain income level. Most people know that. So SNAP is the Oregon Trail Card or food stamps, if you're unaware of that. But SNAP, you have to meet a certain income level. And if you were, until a few years ago, if you were in higher education, you had to meet additional criteria in addition to the regular criteria, which made it really inaccessible. So people had to choose, do I get my SNAP or do I go to higher ed? Which one? Can't do both. But Oregon, when the Farm Bill passed a few years ago, was one of 2 states to change the policy and turn higher education by definition into quote unquote training. And by doing that, by interpreting it as training, we were able to help a huge population of students access SNAP benefits without having these additional criteria they had to meet. And we were still getting the word out about this, doing Snap-a-thons, campaigning statewide. They have groups like Hunger Free Oregon, which are doing campaigning statewide at universities and colleges when the pandemic hit. Now, I will say during the pandemic, there was a redefinition of SNAP and college students that expanded access to SNAP for college students for the pandemic, but that is actually due to end at the end of the declaration of the emergency. But Oregon is now one of 3 states, because Washington changed their interpretation as well, that we had already expanded that access to our students, which is significant. And we're really proud of that. PTO, Pathways to Opportunity, and Partners for Hunger Free Oregon, and some really social justice oriented leadership in DHS. So we're all a part of developing that policy shift. So we're really excited about that. Another policy shift we were about, this is House Bill 4043, this was a few years ago, was where Oregon became the first state to enact legislation that instructs states and agencies and colleges to better communicate and collaborate with one another. So part of our actions in PTO come from this, is that we really need to not live in silos and not have a bunch of different things at different agencies, but actually how can we collaborate and communicate better? So Oregon, again, we're really proud of our leadership in this work, and we do have other states coming to us to look for what we've done and try to replicate what we've been doing. Okay, and this one I'm particularly proud of, House Bill 2835. It just passed the Oregon legislature this last session. It was actually written, and it was in 2019. So we wrote it, passed it, and got it funded at $5 million. This was a really aggressive organization campaign where we got, Partners for Hunger Free Oregon, Pathways to Opportunity. We got Oregon Student Association. We basically visited every legislator. And what this does is it establishes a benefits navigator or basic needs navigator at every community college and university in Oregon. It's $5 million. And that they would continue to have that community of practice that we talked about with Pathways to Opportunity. In the community college system, this will be aligned with STEP and with PTO, and it will continue that community of practice, but now we have funding for an ongoing benefits navigator. It's also important to point out that LCC can be particularly proud because we actually were awarded one of 4 pilot grants last year, just as the pandemic came, where we were actually given funds to hire a pilot benefits navigator. And so we had been working and developing those systems and navigating those relationships with our agency partners when the pandemic hit. And so we actually already have the money, are already in the process of having this benefits navigator. However, now we know we have long-term funding for it. So we're pretty excited about that. So I think I'm out of time because I was supposed to only go for 5 minutes, but what I will say is basically Pathways to Opportunity is essentially about impact, working with local agencies, local partnerships, but also working with state agencies to truly impact policy so we can better support our students in poverty. The one thing I'm not talking about today, and I could talk about for a full hour if you let me, is STEP. And STEP is considered Pathways to Opportunity in Action. We work with, it's also a statewide initiative. All 17 community colleges and many different organizations, Oregon Employment Department, WorkSource Oregon, all the Title I-B providers, and many, many NGOs, locally, Goodwill, Food for Lane County. At any rate, what it ends up happening is we work with all these different agencies and we provide shared case management for our students. So I want to differentiate the difference between this and say, having a food pantry and a clothing stash is wonderful. And having a resource list is of course wonderful. But the difference here is that we actually enroll students in these programs and we have backdoor enrollment access to these programs, and we have shared case management with other case managers at these agencies. We use one tool for case management. So we can put notes, students give us permission, we can put notes, they can put notes, and we collaborate. So we figure out who's on first, who's paying for their tuition, who's paying for their fees. By the way, we can pay for their rent, we can pay for their housing, their internet, we can get them computers. We have lots of emergency funds to support students who are in the STEP program. And it is a program that grows exponentially. I think we have an $800,000 budget this next year. We started with a $300,000 budget and we just invest the same amount at Lane, but the funding grows through the funding that we put in there. And we are pretty excited about that program moving forward. We have probably about $200,000 or 100 and something thousand dollars this next year just to pay for tuition and fees. More importantly, we procure access to funding from other agencies to pay for tuition and fees for our students. So, okay, I definitely went over.
Well, thank you very much, Rosa. And there has been a lot of interest on the board about the work that you're doing. So I know we have some questions, and thank you very much for all the work that you're doing in supporting students in our community. I'm going to go first to Mike, followed by Austin, and then Holly.
Thank you, Rosa, for the work you're doing and for the presentation. I was one of the board members that sort of wanted an update on this, so I really appreciate that. One of the questions I have is that the example you gave with SNAP seemed like a good one, where you might qualify for one benefit, but when you take advantage of that benefit, it takes away some other benefit that you absolutely need. And I'm wondering how the navigator, first of all, how that navigator has enough time to meet with every student that needs navigation, and how that navigator works with situations where one benefit that a person may qualify may disable them from qualifying for another benefit.
So, so the first question is around how the navigator works. What I'll say in the STEP program was we actually have several navigators, and we're in the process of literally interviewing for sort of a main benefits navigator for the college. However, I don't know, there's not a blueprint for what that will look like. It could be that that person sees everybody. It could be that that person trains people throughout campus who want to be a part of this. I mentioned before that we have the ability to grow funding through STEP. So it's really complicated, but the more money we invest in STEP, the more money we pull from STEP. So if we actually leverage our general funds towards STEP, we get more money to pay for students' tuition and fees. So we're working right now on actually leveraging people all across campus, so that if they have their regular 40 hours, but maybe they're doing 10 hours, they're talking to students about STEP or SNAP or whatever. If they bill that, we get 50% of that FTE back for the next year to pay for more tuition and fees. So there's Mount Hood, for example, now has a $2 million annual budget, and they're leveraging about 60 people across campus. So I don't really know what this is going to look like. You know, we now have a basic needs response team, but and so we'll hire this person and we'll move on what this could look like. But it's exciting. It has the possibility to generate excessive funds that gives direct support to students. And my hope is that it's not just one person, but it's one person who provides leadership for a lot of people.
Thanks.
Austin and then Holly.
Yeah, I agree with you. I could talk about STEP all day. But anyway, yeah, with the STEP program here, I just want to thank the staff that you and the staff for all the work you do to serve these the student population. And I had two kind of questions, and one in regards to STEP. Is the career pathways and the kind of the goals of the career pathways kind of the guiding principle? So it's a dynamic question. Is it a guiding principle to how like the opportunity plans are created, or is the STEP program a tool, is one of the tools in the toolbox for the career pathways? My second question is the benefit navigator also going to be helping with like TUI programs for those who are students and collecting unemployment?
So let's see, the answer to your first two questions, I would actually say both, right? I'd say we have a career pathways framework and a pathways to opportunity framework, and PTO and STEP. STEP is PTO in action. I mean, it's very abstract, I get it. So, but and in general, we serve a lot of barriers, not just SNAP, in the career pathways department. So we have, for example, a lot of undocumented students that aren't going to access SNAP and aren't going to be eligible for STEP. And so, but we treat them with the same structure in terms of, here's a coach, let's navigate external resources. STEP funds is one of those resources. SNAP is one of those resources, but you don't have access to all those resources. Here's some other resources you have access to. And yeah, TUI is a big one, especially right now. Is just, and we're really strongly connected to Oregon Employment Department and WorkSource Oregon. So all the individuals who want to go to school who are already on unemployment benefits need to be aware that they should be filling out that TUI application so that they can go to school and not risk losing their benefits, which actually goes to Board Member Eister's question around how to navigate, navigating how to avoid losing one resource for another. And I think, again, it's about that coalition and relationship with those other agencies. For example, there's a monthly housing network. So we have to learn those pit holes, or not me, it's the coaches, and I'm actually not a coach myself. But they have to learn those pitfalls, and that's what they do help people navigate and negotiate.
So Holly, followed by Steve.
Thank you. Wow. Wow. That's so awesome. As a coordinator of a student success program, I'm just so excited to hear about your programs and what y'all offer. I have a few questions. I'm just curious about how people find out about your program, and if you actively recruit, or if they are sent to you by referrals, other organizations, partners in the community, schools, counselors, advisors. Wow, you guys are doing great work. That was a very thorough report, and I'm just like excited over it.
Me too.
And I wish you guys much luck in the future. But my real question is, what kind of success have you had? And do you guys, how many of students are you noticing a trend in where they are entering into the workforce in some of the agencies, organizations that you have connected them with, and or graduation rates? And then lastly, I'd like to know if you all offer any type of mentorship program for those who have completed and were successful in your program. Are they mentoring the new students who are coming in?
All right, so mentorship, recruitment,
success rates.
And rates, okay. All right, so, okay, so first, when I mentioned that we kind of have grown exponentially, when we first started, we were small and we have minimal capacity. The coaches really show our capacity. So if we don't have the coaches, we don't have the capacity. So we are in the middle of hiring 2 new part-time and 1 new full-time coach as we speak. And that's all soft money, by the way. So all soft money that we grew through these different funding sources. And so, so for recruitment, the vast majority of our initial population came directly from our agency partners. So people in the system either the employment system or Homes for Good or somewhere accessing resources that needed someone to get short-term training, right? Someone to gain access to career technical education. We negotiate with them. So lots of times they have money, maybe they have money to pay, but not the full amount. So they pay what they can pay and then we pay what we can pay. We haven't had a lot of internal recruitment and referrals. That is something we're working on now. Because we've been focusing on getting the people that couldn't access education to begin with in the door. But now there's a whole host of students who are on campus that don't really know we exist and could be benefiting from the same kind of resources and maybe prevent them from dropping out entirely. Okay, I will go to mentorship. We don't have a mentorship program, no, but what we do have is that we have components. So there's remediation and basic needs, there's coaching, we call it STT, but it's coaching, remediation, vocational training, the career technical education, there's prerequisites, and there's employment job search training. We do not do the job search training employment skills, our partners do. So we do clear handoffs. So when you enroll a step with us, you actually enroll with everybody else. And so we do clean referrals. So they get right backdoor into the STEP program with our partner agencies who then do the employment services. But that would be great to do something more elaborate. We should, we don't. So I didn't bring data, but we do have some really good reports I could send and email to whoever wants them. I do have a slide. It'll probably take me too long to find a slide, but what I can say is that we initially invested $300,000 in the program and it stayed stagnant. And yet now our program is $800,000, right? So our initial investment hasn't changed, but because we're able to exponentially grow. So the kind of data we do have, which I'm sorry I didn't bring, is the amount of money that we've paid for tuition and fees, the amount of money we've procured for others. We focus on short-term training. So we focus on the initial steps. So a one-year certificate, a career pathway certificate, and then we facilitate transitioning them to elsewhere on campus or employment. And so we do have actually really good completion rates because we are hyper vigilant about making sure they finish that first step. But
it's awesome.
I'll send you better data than my.
Yes. So if you could, Rosa, maybe share that with Marge and she could send it out to the board.
Sure.
That would be great. And I've got Steve's hand, and then I think we'll wrap it up there because we're pretty much at time. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, Rosa, just like everybody else, I want to say thanks for the presentation, and it's just incredibly inspiring work. Excuse me, incredibly inspiring work that you're doing. So thank you so much for doing it, but also coordinating it and sharing it with us. I recognize that you're not here tonight asking for funding. This is a discussion item, not an action item. However, should this, be thinking about that, contemplating that in the future, I could just tell you the things that will be, really compelling to me and perhaps to other board members, and perhaps you've already done some of this. I'm not suggesting you haven't, but connecting the program to, to the initial metrics that you shared. We saw that some 62% of LCC students have some unmet need, and then you had it disaggregated, the percent that were homeless and how that compares to state and national trends, and those who were food insecure in the same way, state and national trends. And I think in all the cases, we were slightly above whatever those state trends were. So for me, right, as a board member, and I'll presume to some extent at least that some of the other board members would feel the same way, establishing goals. Our goal is to reduce to get below the state average, for example, and maybe by a certain percentage point, by a certain period of time. That kind of stuff is very compelling to, I think, to establish for a board to review. That's the kind of stuff that we should be doing, is establishing goals, but then also, of course, establishing the metrics that we would want tracked to see what kind of progress is being made on an annual basis towards those goals. So, and I won't try and get into what all those metrics would be, but I certainly would want to see included the kinds of students that you're reaching out to, and if you can show us the percent reduction in dropout rates, if you can show us what our investment leverages both statewide and nationally back into our community. Those things are really compelling. If you can tell me that for every dollar that we put in, we get $3 out of it, that's going to sound like a really good thing, and it's going to be hard not to support it. So this is more of a comment. You don't necessarily have to respond.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'll keep that in mind if you invite me back. Before you end this, Chairwoman Fragola, I wanted to mention, if you guys didn't already know, there is this all-in-one student podcast that they've been doing across the state, where they've been interviewing students, and then they've been interviewing presidents, and then they've been interviewing policymakers. And maybe you all already know this, but President Hamilton actually did the interview. And so we had a pass lane student, President Hamilton, and then somebody who is from CLASP, I believe, who works on IETs and IBEST type models and policy associated with that. So if you don't already have that link, I'm happy to send it. But you can hear President Hamilton in that interview and one of our students. So
great. Well, thank you so much, Rosa. That was a great discussion. So I am going to move us on to accreditation on our agenda. And just before we do start this conversation, I am going to reference the calendar again. We have our whole calendar in place now for the year, but we have a new Q accreditation visit October 24th through October 27th. Really big deal. So now we're getting ready for that. And I'm going to turn it over to Richard to talk with us about it.
Thank you, Chair Fragola, and thank you everybody for letting me appear before you 2 times in one night. I start this conversation with fantastic news. We just recently received from our accreditor their response on the Year 6 report that we had submitted. The final submission was in March of this spring. I am so proud of our team and be able to share that we are in full compliance with all areas of the Year 6 requirements. That is a magnanimous effort, which places us in a good position to submit the combined Year 6 and Year 7 report here in the first part of August. There were a few items they asked for additional information in with the Year 6 report, nothing major. We are addressing those in addendum and have already reviewed them with our officer, Pam Goad at NUCU. So we are making fantastic progress. Now, as we transition to focus on the Year 7 submission and the site visit, it's a few things that we are doing. The report for Year 7 is attached in the board agenda. Also, it is in the Lane Weekly. We are getting responses from folks addressing it, reading it, giving comment. Our liaison officer, Dr. Pam Goad, has also been provided a copy. We will be meeting with her again next week for her additional input. In a Year 7, it's a reaccreditation, much similar to other accreditors across the nation. What we are going to have in this site visit is they're going to visit with you, members of the board, with members of the faculty, members of the administration, classified members, as well as students. A couple of things which are at the front of their plate for this year's site visit are very near and dear to us here at Lane. One is how we are utilizing our disaggregated data. They were thrilled to see that we have moved into a business intelligence model. They saw a clip of our dashboards. They're very excited about this. They're wanting to know, now that we know, what would we like to know, and how are we going to go about finding that out? The other part of that is in our post-pandemic learning environment. How are we moving past the pandemic and preparing to rebuild our enrollments that have been described as fragile, not only by ourselves, but as many schools across the nation are encountering challenges. Our accreditor also mentioned that there is a national trend through 2027 with challenges towards enrollment. I responded that we have a strategic enrollment plan that we are enacting. They were thrilled to hear about it, but when they come to the site visit, they will want to know about those 2 key points, among with the others about institutional effectiveness. I would like to commend the committee that has helped on this tremendously. We had 30+ authors contribute to this document. That is the most I've ever had in any accreditation report. They have done a fantastic job. The project management that Anna Scott and Gina Zabadi as our technical writer have demonstrated throughout this process have helped produce a very effective report for the accreditor and the review team to see. It has excellent photography by Media Services representing the pandemic and hopefully post-pandemic life that we're going to experience here at the college. And then we move to the, after the submission, preparing our college. As you see in the agenda, we have board prep sessions, faculty sessions, classified sections, management sections, weekly spots in the lane weekly in the month of October. We will be releasing more videos prepared to be in the lane weekly and for our in-service, specifically pointing towards the direction of the site visit, how to prepare, how to respond, what they'll be looking for. We have a manager's retreat, and there will be additional sessions assembled as identified as we further our talks with not only our officer at NUCU, but also with the pre-talks with the review team that will be coming virtually. And I want to reiterate that this year, through the end of the calendar year, all visits will be virtual with NUCU for site visits. We will be using the Zoom environment. So I hear that we're going to have a few Zoom follies. We might be able to get a few from the site visit, but they're serious, but they understand, you know, that this is virtual and there's always a few ups and downs when you have a virtual visit. So the key themes is they asked us to be focused but flexible. So I said, I think we can do that. With that being said, I don't want to take up a lot of time because I want to be mindful that we've extended in some areas over our time frame. And I do want to open it up for any questions that we might have.
Okay, are there any questions or comments from board members? Steve.
Thanks, Richard. I just really wanted to connect a little bit the last presentation and this one, and I'm wondering if in your purview, institutional effectiveness includes monitoring some of the concerns that, Rosa brought to our attention, some of the stresses that students feel, prior to becoming students, once they are students, things that cause them to drop out, things that cause them to not understand what resources they're available. Anyway, so how is it that your data analytics might support that work and help the board understand where additional investment may or may not be needed?
I'm glad you brought that up, trustee. We will be looking at the holistic services to build a KPIs multiple to understand how we're not only providing our students an opportunity for education, but how we're supporting them, where the gaps are. The gaps are also identified from college survey that we participate with. One is the CESI, the Community College Survey of Student Engagement. There are others. As the students come to us with the services, and we will be tracking the number of times that they engage with counselors or services to understand the cycles that they're in. Also, with their persistence, retention, and completion models, those students that have been identified as receiving services by count, not by we do protect them by FERPA and HIPAA, but we're looking at how the services are helping our completion rate move forward and helping students persist from one semester or quarter to the next. Also, we're looking at when our students leave, how can we stay in contact with them, not only through an exit interview, but as they enter into the employment and transition to lifelong learners or enter into employment and continue their education at a four-year institution. We're bringing in the clearinghouse, National Student Clearinghouse records of students who go on, because if they transfer and they had attended here, we can locate them. So we want to holistically serve our students, not only by providing them the access to come to our college, but with the services they need to be successful. We'll be monitoring each of those services. Right now, we're building KPIs with the Strategic Enrollment Management Plan. We're building them with the guided pathways. We're also building them with holistic services. We do expect to have these in the first part of January of this next calendar year. So if there's another question I can answer, trustee, I'd be happy to.
I just want to say, I can't tell you how happy I am to hear that. I'm looking forward to the KPIs.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Richard? Okay, thank you very much, Richard.
Thank you.
Still reading that entire report, but I'll get through it. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to stakeholder reports. I believe with the LCC student government, we do not have a representative here tonight, but you do have a report in your packet. So tonight we are going to hear first from LCCEF President Frankie Coconor.
Hi, thank you for having me back again tonight. I'm Frankie Coconor. Oh, I turned my camera off. I apologize. I'm Frankie Coconor, the president of LCCEF. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'd like to officially welcome our new board members to their first board meeting, Austin Fulnegi and Steve Meidel. We're very excited to continue working with you, Austin, and we're excited to start working with you, Steve. I feel that I've been very lucky as the union president to have been able to work with the board that we have. And I'm just really excited to continue that. And I also want to say congrats to our chair, Lisa Fragola, and our co-chair, Rosie Pryor. Very happy about that. Coming to the decision that you guys came to tonight and voting unanimously for mandatory vaccinations was no easy task. And we're so very grateful for your vote. I'm going to say I am personally, because earlier this month, I had my exchange daughter from Indonesia reach out to me. She apologized for not replying back to me for a few weeks. I'd been wanting to do a FaceTime call with her to show her her beautiful new niece. I honestly figured that she must be busy with work and just not seeing my messages. I had no idea that she'd been fighting for her life for the past couple weeks. You see, for three days after she had gotten her first dose for the COVID vaccine, she caught COVID and she ended up getting hospitalized because she couldn't breathe. I had no idea this was happening with her. And I'm so grateful that she survived and that her only lingering symptom is that she has a severe cough at this time. She's only 24 years old. And after I got done talking with her, I kept thinking about our students. They're so young, and the Delta variant, which is what she had, moves so fast and is attacking the younger generations. And so I'm so proud to work at a school where we're actively seeking to protect them. So thank you. I'm also so proud that we have two unions, college administrators in our board of education that were able to come together in unity and to do what is in our power to provide a safe campus for people to work on and for people to study. On a different note, IT has a contract with, our college has a contract with Oculus IT. You'll find what Kenneth Sherry and I are discussing is in an article, CBA 9.2.6, which I'll forward to you guys after the board after the meeting. LCCEF would like to know if anyone in the college is planning on outsourcing all or part of IT to a foreign country, India. India has had their employees exploited and underpaid for a very long time. As Kenny said earlier in his public comments, there are job duties that have been given to this company that can and should be done by our IT employees. Our IT department has been short-staffed for several years and as inexpensive as it is to outsource their work, it goes against the contract the college has with LCCEF. Right now, we have one position that it was just vacated, and that position before it was vacated was directly involved with banner work, and we have 3 current positions that are being affected. This means a lot to me. Over 10 years ago, in 2010, our local community became victims of outsourcing to foreign countries. My position at Symantec was outsourced to India, and they hired a whole team of 10 people to do my job for less than what they paid the average employee in wages, benefits, and overhead costs. I see so many ethical issues in outsourcing employment like this, especially when several dozens of my coworkers at Symantec received Trade Act money. I also received that. And they spent their money here at Lane Community College so that they could have careers that they wouldn't lose due to outsourcing. And now we're doing what Symantec did. What a shame. Thank you.
Thank you, Frankie. So up next, we have LCCEA President Adrian Mitchell.
Good evening, members of the board, and welcome, Steve and Austin. We look forward to working with you during your tenure on the board. First, I would like to express appreciation to you all for your unanimous support for LCC becoming a fully vaccinated campus, and hope that LCC will serve as a model for other community colleges to help promote public health for the common good, and to expand access to the vaccine through partnership with local public health authorities. In addition, I wish to express appreciation for the adoption of a new board meeting schedule that will allow more meetings to take place during the academic year when more students and faculty are on campus. Finally, I'd like to provide an update regarding full-time faculty positions and search processes. As reported last month, there were 3 full-time faculty positions approved for hire in April, but still not yet posted as of the June board meeting. Since that time, 1 position was posted yesterday. However, the faculty coordinator positions for 2 CTE programs in health professions have not yet been posted. These are necessary positions which are required for each program's accreditation and approved more than 3 months ago. This presents an ongoing concern for our collective ability to recruit BIPOC faculty. Abbreviated off-cycle search processes in the middle of summer contravene the critical goal of expanding diverse representation among the faculty. Furthermore, as you may know, after experiencing a decrease of 20% of full-time faculty positions over 5 years, the College and Association reached an agreement in fall of 2019 in our current contract that provides a minimum threshold for full-time faculty positions. Unfortunately, we have not yet had a single day when the college has fulfilled this obligation. Thank you for your attention to this issue, which continues to affect the instructional mission of the college and the learning environment for students. Collectively, we have an incredible opportunity to transform Lane Community College through recruitment of faculty from diverse backgrounds. Let's not miss it. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. So that brings us to our information reports. Are there any questions about any of the information reports in section 6 of the board packet, or 7? Okay, I'm going to move us on then. Moving into closing items, I did so for board reports. I just wanted to acknowledge the recent appointments by the board to some of our community liaison positions. Mike Eister will be representing the board with Lane County of Government. Rosie Pryor will continue to represent the board with the LCC Foundation. Austin is going to be our appointed representation on Oregon Community Colleges Association, and Holly is going to represent us with KLCC. So I'm not expecting any board reports tonight, but in the future, if anyone would like to give a report at this time in the meeting, we always have it as a standing agenda item. Mike?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate one more time the appreciation I have for the robust effort that the administration made and all the data they gathered to help us with our decision on vaccination. And I appreciate the clear statements from the 2 unions as well. They were very helpful.
Agreed. Thank you, Mike. Moving us on to the ad hoc committee reports. I just wanted to acknowledge that we do have some changes in memberships on ad hoc committees. There is still room on the community engagement or political action committee. And then I also wanted to recognize that we have a new ad hoc committee, which is the presidential recruitment and search ad hoc, which includes myself, Rosie Pryor, and Steve on that one. So we'll be working to bring more information to the board from that committee. But any ad hoc committee are welcome to report at this time of the agenda as well. We have anything? Okay, so I'm going to move us to our future meeting dates and agenda items. So our next meeting date as a board is our work session on September 8th. So that's the first Wednesday of September. So we have our August break. I did want to bring to the attention of the board some upcoming conferences. Fall is the busy conference time of the year. These are all in your calendar. September 24th is the OCCA new board member training. So any members of the board who would like to attend that could contact Donna. October 13th to 16th is the ACCT annual Congress meeting that is occurring in San Diego this year. November 3rd through 5th is the OCCA conference, and November 11th through 13th is the OSBA conference, and those are both in Oregon. I think that they might both be at Sun River, but I can't remember correctly. So typically for the conferences in Oregon, we tend to have a little bit more leeway in terms of people attending, but a while ago, I think it was right when I first joined the board, we did decide to be a little more cautious about how many members that we send to some of these more distant ACCT conferences, just to be thoughtful about what we're spending. We do have a couple of board members that are interested in attending ACCT, but if there are anyone who is interested in attending these conferences could check in with Donna about more information and with Marge. I see we've got Rosie and then Austin.
Thank you. You mentioned that the September work session was on the 8th. According to the calendar in our packet, it's on the 1st, not the 8th. It's on the 1st.
You are correct.
Yeah, I just wanted to flag that. I thought it was going to be on the 8th also. So when I didn't find that on my personal calendar, I thought, whoops, I better double check. And
thank you for that correction. I did not catch the 5th or the 5 Wednesdays in that month. So you are right. So September 1st is our next meeting of the board.
The other thing I wanted to just observe, 10 years ago when I first joined the board, just about the very first communication I got from the administration was I interested in attending the National Community College Conference. Our family is very sensitive about people traveling on the taxpayers' dime. So I called the then college president and said, what are the board norms around travel? And then President Mary Spilde said to me, the annual national conference is really a superior conference. And if you can possibly go, I encourage you to go. You will learn a lot. So I just wanted to share that with my colleagues. And I would like to ask my longstanding colleagues to consider making sure that we prioritize any newer board members to the community college world if they're interested and can make the time to go to the ACCT conference. I really encourage you to go. You will learn a lot.
Thanks, Rosie. Austin?
I just wanted to give a quick FYI to the rest of the board. And I've informed Lisa and President Hamilton about this, that I got approved to teach a workshop at the Oregon School Board Association and at the ACCT conference. So I'm really excited to have that opportunity. I just wanted to give everyone a heads up that of that approval. And I know that Lisa and President Hamilton also have a workshop approved. So, I just want to say that there's a lot of good representation from our community college, and not only on the learning aspect from these conferences, but also to share our knowledge as well. So I just wanted to give everyone an FYI about that, this is a really incredible board and there's some great knowledge on this board. So thank you.
Austin, do you want to say what the workshop you're going to be doing is?
Yes, about it's called Building the Bench. It's been essentially, I kind of described it a little bit. It's, you have your starting five on a basketball team, but what's on the bench is also important, and, for the rest of the game and so forth. And so I'm developing a workshop about how to recruit board members from the millennial and Generation Z population, and how we can mentor them and bring them up and build the bench, because when we think towards the future and we think towards the next generation of leaders and how can we support them, especially education leaders, that's incredibly important. So.
Great, thank you. Any other board members? All right, well, I think that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you all very much for a productive meeting. I'm going to officially adjourn this meeting. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Good night.
Night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.